Shh. Let's try this again. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Weston.
Anyway, we've got a couple of things going on this morning. If you look to my right, you see my friend and colleague who is technically not a member of the HC&ED committee. So why is he here? He's here because he's the chair of jobs, and we're doing a joint hearing today on one item. So that explains Mr. Smith's presence today. I have no reason as to why I'm here, but I will try to do the best that I can. So we've got, like I said, we've got a joint hearing, and we've got our normal HC&ED hearing, and we will move forward with the consent calendar of the joint the Housing Committee, and we'll do it as a communique from the chair. Okay, so with that said, what I want to move is items 3 through 10, except for I'll hold 9 because Chuck Tennant has something to say on item 9. So, Ms. Barclay, let's start off with item 3.
Good morning, Meg Barclay with the CLA's office. Item 3 is a report from the CRA and the CAO and a resolution relative to the commitment of $1.35 million and various other actions to implement the Boyle Heights Homeownership Preservation Program.
Okay, then on item 3, as a communique from the chair, we will adopt the CAO report. Item 4.
Item 4 is a report from the CRA and the CAO relative to amending the fiscal year 2009 CRA budget for systems development projects.
Okay, item 4 will also be adopted as we'll adopt the CAO report as communique from the chair. Brings us to item 5.
Item 5 is a report from the CRA and the CAO and a resolution relative to the transfer of funds to the Department of Public Works for the installation of public improvements on East Huntington Drive.
Okay, then without objection, we'll adopt the CAO report on that item. That brings us to, what, item 6?
Yes, sir. Item 6 is a report from the CRA and the CLA relative to expanding the boundaries for redevelopment survey area A, encompassing the communities of Reseda, Winnetka, and Canoga Park.
Okay, then we'll adopt the CLA report on that item. That brings us to item 7.
Item 7 is a report from CDD and the CAO and a resolution relative to the execution of agreements for the extension of the maturity date of certificates of participation executed by the city on behalf or for the benefit of the Samuel A. Fryer Yavna Academy.
Okay, then on item 7, we'll adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 8.
Item 8 is a report from the CDD and the CAO and a resolution relative to the execution of various agreements relative to certificates of participation executed by the city for the benefit of the Westview School.
Okay, then on that item, we'll adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 10.
Item 10 is a motion, Parks Perry, relative to the feasibility of establishing a permanent program to provide emergency housing assistance to victims of fires and other catastrophic disasters, including residents displaced by foreclosures.
Mr. City Clerk, that motion, who's the maker of that motion and who seconded that motion?
Councilmember Parks, sir, is the maker, and Councilmember Perry is the mover.
Now, who was the second person again? Could you repeat
Councilmember
that?
Perry?
And Councilmember Perry sits on what committee?
Your committee, sir. This
On
committee,
this
the
committee?
Housing Committee.
Mr. City Attorney, given that revelation, what do you think we do with this motion?
But she's not here today.
You want me to tell her that you said she's not here?
No, I would think recommend that
Mr.
you
City Clerk, could
approve it as
we
a
enter that
communication.
into the minutes of the meeting?
Very good, sir.
Okay, even though we had a confused city attorney, on item 10, we will adopt the motion, okay, as a communique from the chair. Okay, Chuck, I was on a roll. You stopped us. You better have something super good to say on item number 9. Read item 9, Meg, and then we're going to listen to Mr. Tennant, who has a very snazzy thermal shirt on today.
I have a tie underneath, but you know what?
No, I like it just like it is. I don't know why.
It's really warm. It's thermal.
Read the item.
Item 9 is a report from the Los Angeles Housing Department and the CLA relative to a request for proposals for urgent repair construction services for the urgent repair program.
Mr. Tennant.
This item, and what I'm going to say, relates to the urgent repair construction for urgent repair program. what about the program that they had that was canceled for people that live in housing that's unlivable? They had a program by the LA Neighborhood Services. It was canceled because no money in the city. And I took a look at some of those houses that people live in. It's really sad. That's the construction that they should do, is help the people and do construction in repairing the housing that they live in. It's pitiful. I can't believe it. And they don't ask for much, but you ought to see some of them. The bathrooms, the living rooms, the kitchens, terrible. And they stop the programs. And you know what? That's not right. So if they're going to do a proposal for urgent repair construction services for an urgent repair program, the greatest urgent repair program is the program that they had in helping people reconstruct their pitiful housing. And that's very important because people need to live. They have that right to live in being happy and living in conditions that are right. You know what? Maybe the housing department ought to go see the LA Neighborhood Services and take them on a tour and look at some of these things. And you know what? You could cry. I hope they do something that relates to an urgent repair program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chuck, but don't go anywhere, because I'm going to do, after we move on this item, I'm going to do public comment. We have been joined by Council Member Perry. So, Mr. City Attorney, do I tell on you now or later?
Now.
Much later.
Okay, so on item 9, we'll adopt the CLA report. Chuck, you have public comment?
Yes, sir, I do. 29 seconds?
No. We'll reset the clock.
Okay.
Just give us time to reset the clock.
I
Good morning
just,
again.
Being the time of the year, the great economic revolution of 2008 is the people not spending money. And you know, there's an economic revolution and recession going on in this country. We all know it. And people aren't spending money. There's a lot of violence and anger and hatred and uncertainty in this country that needs to stop. Stop the violence in this country. The economic violence, the violence in our housing, the violence in our street, the violence in our cities, our communities, and our government, and the lending institutions. It's a growing madness that will continue to grow if we don't find ways to stop it now. It needs to trickle from the bottom up, not from the top down. And we need to give this country back to the people that built it and end this madness. The great economic revolution, the depression of 2008, remember, it starts with you and me. We need to turn it around. May God bless this city of ours and all the people that live in it. And I wish all of the committee members happy holidays and a prosperous new year. Stop the violence. We can all live in peace. Support Janice Hahn's song project to help the kids, and support Herb Weston's project, Save, to help the kids, because they are the future of this city, and we need to give children a chance and an opportunity. We need a change, and the greed and the madness has to end. Also, one final comment on owner occupancy evictions that are no fault. It needs to go back to this committee. It needs to be rejected in the fairness of good public policy. And you know what? This city needs a really, really good housing policy that they don't have. And you know what? No fault is no fault. Look at all the other no faults. Nobody's taking money away from those people that need it, especially disabled people and elderly people. And you know what? Families need housing. Ask Ed Reyes. He said his wish is that everybody lives in housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Okay, now we've just been joined by Council President Eric Garcetti, my dear friend Ed Reyes. So the HC&ED committee has a quorum, and also the Jobs committee has a quorum as well. So if there's no objection on the consent items, which were items, Mr. City Attorney, 3 through 10, I'd like to change that from a communique from a chair and just have it approved by the entire body. Okay, that brings us to item 2. Mr. Jackson, read the item. Mr. Jackson, come forward. Good to see you again.
Item 2 is communications from the mayor and the City Ethics Commission relative to the reappointment of Mr. William H. Jackson III to the Community Redevelopment Agency Board of Commissioners for the term ending November 4th, 2012.
So you want to do this again?
Yes, I do.
Well, wait, you know what? Explain that to us.
Well, I think that the last 3 years have been probably the best educational experience I've ever had, and how the city works and what the needs that we have in our redevelopment areas. And we haven't had a full board for most of the time that I've been on the board, but the mayor recently appointed someone who I think will be coming before you within the next month. And hopefully we can really hit the ground running with a full board. We do have a very new staff at our downtown headquarters, as well as some new regional administrators. And there's 3 priorities that I definitely want to focus on, and I think that we have a consensus among the board members. The first is to really figure out this affordable housing issue. I think that it's become very clear with what's going on in the economy that we're going to have a lot of challenges as a nation and certainly as a city. And I think that this is one of the reasons why you have a redevelopment agency, to really figure out during these kind of times how you can do something on a local level to help people have housing. I think the second priority that we have is our economic development strategy, especially with jobs creation. We spent a lot of time last year with developing a construction careers policy. There's some new things that we're talking about in terms of how to make permanent jobs a part of what we do at the redevelopment agency. So also in terms of employing our youth, I think there's going to be a tremendous need, especially during this summer and the summer break, to figure out ways for some of our teenagers and younger people to have employment opportunities. So we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on that. And then I think the third thing that's really important to me is to figure out a way to take our industrial areas and definitely piggyback on what President Obama and the Congress is talking about in terms of our infrastructure, and figure out a way to utilize those areas that are underutilized, and to, I think, utilize green manufacturing and other industry attractive programs to redevelop and revitalize those areas. So, those are my 3 priorities. I think that a lot of the things that we needed to do over the past 3 years, we've made good progress on. We're going to keep trying to make good progress, and I'd like to see those through. And so that's primarily why I'd like to come back and serve a little bit longer.
Okay, well, I know that Ms. Perry wants to make a statement, ask a question or two, and so does Mr. Reyes. But before, and looks like Mr. Garcetti has that wink and a nod, so I think he has something to say as well. But I will say this, speaking for myself, in the few years that I've been here, it's been a pleasure for me to work with you. I find you, knowledgeable and just kind of like even-keeled, which I think is very important during these crazy times. So, I commend you for your continuing desire to serve in a very, serving on that is not a walk in the park. And so, I personally appreciate it and look forward to working with you in the future. Now, when Mr. Reyes came here today, Mr. Smith, he indicated to me that his seat had been changed. And so we looked and we find Mr. Smith to my right.
Always.
Generally, it's Mr. Reyes to my right, and now we've got Mr. Reyes to my left.
Properly to your left.
Wait, and Mr. Reyes said that as it should be.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, that's what
Mr.
he.
Garcetti to the
That,
extreme.
yeah, Mr. Garcetti. And
What does it say about our clerk?
in fact, Mr. Garcetti, we're going to get the sergeant to open up, one of the other rooms. So that you, with that said, Miss Perry.
To the right of
Let's
Mr.
see.
Smith.
I should be sitting over
the
there.
right
by
of
my-
Mr.
No, I should be by myself as the independent thinker.
Okay, good. That's a good one.
That didn't work well for Mr.
You better laugh,
All right.
city
No, no, no,
attorney.
no. That's all right.
I
I'm good
got
with
you.
that. I'm good with that. I'm very comfortable with that. I want to tell you, Mr. Jackson, publicly how much I appreciate your leadership on the board, and I hope that they have the vision and the foresight to keep you as chair. You have been a moderating influence. You have been someone who has led that board to put facts and truth and information always on the record first and foremost, even at your own peril. You have shown yourself to be not only a quick study, and I can't even believe you even think you needed an education. You were far beyond, what was necessary when you hit the ground running. I know you have led the way to save any number of situations over there on behalf of the people of the 9th District in our redevelopment areas. Even after the board would take a vote and someone would attempt to undo a deal over there after commitments had been made, and you did it with intelligence, with focus, and with facts. And that's all I've ever wanted in terms of working with a commissioner, is to be truthful, to be factual, to be deliberative, to be open, and to do it on the record. And you do all those things, and you exceed that standard. And I am grateful that you're still willing to continue. And you certainly have absolutely, I don't say that about a lot of commissioners, because usually I just go, okay, it's the mayor's right to do the appointment, and we don't have a lot of commissioners from the 9th. But you have certainly worked very, very hard on behalf of all the redevelopment areas in the 9th District. And I'm probably one of the districts that has the most redevelopment areas, maybe second Mr. Garcetti or Mr. Reyes. But I have always embraced redevelopment and think it's probably one of the most efficient ways to revitalize a community. And so I'm grateful to you, and grateful for as long as you're willing to stay, and you have my support.
Ms.
Thank you.
Perry, well said, well said. You are like the glue that kind of holds things together over there. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Jackson.
Good morning.
Thank you as well for your hard work. I've gone to several meetings as a staff person and as a council member, and there's a lot of dancing going on when you guys are up there, so I congratulate you. But we've worked as a city and focused on a river master plan. And a lot of those corridors, the riverfront, what is evolving into riverfront districts, we're now at a place, probably the most difficult is implementation. And as we see the opportunity to connect neighborhoods in such a way where we can create greenways and jobs, from your point of view, seeing that we need to stimulate public work projects, we need to be in a place where as a city we could trigger the type of economic activity that we would hope the federal government would seek in stimulating these jobs. How do you see the River Master Plan in connection with the overlapping areas of the CRA? And do you see it as a method by which we could invite the president's program in terms of investing in the urban centers and dealing with our water issues, environmental issues? I mean, how do you see that connection? I just want to get your perspective as chair or former chair.
Well, what I would say is that for me, downtown Los Angeles, I've certainly said it before I ever served on the board, but now that I'm down here all the time and seeing it in our project areas, I think it's an incredible resource and a gem that hasn't fully been polished and cut, but you can see it happening. And I think that the master plan, when it was unveiled and brought before our board, it really took everybody's breath away when you see the vision of what we could have over, I would say it's a 10, 20, 30 years sort of thing, because we're talking about starting all the way up in the valley and winding its way all the way through our city. And I think that when you look at what we're trying to do with our urban streetscapes, with our transit-oriented development, with our revitalization of our industrial areas, the river is a connecting point for all of those things. And so for me, what I would very much like to do is make sure that our city puts itself in a position to where it can actually follow through on its development of that. And so one example of doing that is that the planning department is redoing all of its community plans. And I know that we are teaming with them in redoing community plans. We need to be in a position where we're really forward thinking in terms of our master planning and our entitlement, so that we don't get into a situation where the planning commission is doing their thing and the CRA is doing their thing, and then we've got the master plan that's working on some sort of separate track, and then we have the various other elements of the city who are all doing things, you know, on their own in a tunnel mentality. I think that we need to certainly your leadership and the leadership of the city council is very important to say, what are all the elements that we need to do collectively together in an efficient manner to really bring this thing off. And I think that we have to have, you know, we talk about political will a lot, but we really have to have the political will to think big. An example of that is the Hollywood Cat Park. I remember when that was first proposed, and people said, we can't do this. I mean, this, you know, it's too expensive. How are you going to build a park over a freeway? And now I can see that that's got a critical mass. And I think the same thing has to happen with this river master plan, where we have to have people take leadership and really expend in these difficult times money. And I know that we at the CRA are willing to take our resources to lay it out and go for it. And I think that we can achieve all those things that were laid out for us, and probably in a quicker time frame. And I think if we do those things, we can go to Washington, resources will be freed up, and we'll be in a position where we'll be competitive with other cities and other projects to bring that to fruition.
And I want to thank you. You and Cecilia and the staff have been proactive in understanding the toolbox that you have within the CRA's capacity to promote change, and working in such a manner in which we are being very methodical, and we need to take this piece by piece, and we are, like you said, in the embryonic stages. But if we can break through these silos and create that leveraging capacity, I think we have a very strong movement.
And there was one other thing I was going to say, which is I think that what we've been trying to do at the CRA, and there's a huge potential to increase on this in the coming years, is using private dollars in a way to, you know, to leverage what we're doing. So, for example, we have a new market tax credit allocation that we were able to achieve with the CDD that I've been pushing everybody to reapply for the next round of allocations. There are a number of infrastructure allocation private equity funds that have been launched, that have, you know, capital available, that I think that if you take what you're trying to do with the river and you look at what we're trying to do in our industrial areas, those are the type of infrastructure projects where certainly, together with, you know, state or federal dollars, we could leverage them and to, you know, make those sorts of things a reality. So I think we have to be very open to how can we structure what we're doing also to the private sector to make it attractive and hit the retirement targets that they're trying to hit. So we're very much trying to push that forward too.
I think we're long overdue for lunch.
Oh yeah, we definitely.
Right.
No,
thank you, Mr. Jackson.
That's one of the reasons why I wanted to, you know, come back here.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Eric will cook.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. That brings us to Council President Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Mr. Jackson. I, too, would add my voice to the choir of how pleased I've been with your leadership and how well we've been served in the city by your leadership at the helm. And I heartily endorse your reappointment. If you're willing to do it, I'm all there for you. One only question, and thank you for laying out the vision and answering the questions of my colleagues. In this budget year, when we're looking at, you know, CRA being the only plum to poach from the state, what are your emergency plans? Those deliberations are happening, excuse me, right now as we speak. They may happen while we are all gone, in fact. And our worry and the committee's worry, I think, has been, okay, we know, sure, I'd love to attract a, you know, solar manufacturer like Ms. Perry has, or some green jobs. Those things take some time. If we see our money going in the next, you know, month or two, what's your quickest route of getting that money out on the street within those priorities that you mentioned?
Well, I think that this is an issue that is not just a CRA issue. It's a city issue in the budget environment. And I think that when you look at our budgets, you know, whatever it says on our budget, we're not allocating in any particular year because of the way that our money comes out and the way that we have our carryover funds. And so I think that we always have to be long-term in terms of our approach, but we have to be efficient with how we get dollars out. And so examples of that efficiency are, I think that the CRA for a long time has had projects that have been on its books for 10 years, 20 years, but they haven't necessarily, for one reason or the other, come to fruition. I
don't think it's fair to talk about Mr. Zion's projects when he's not here. I mean,
what we're doing is rigorously trying to say what is realistic. Mm-hmm. And if something's not realistic, taking it out of our budget, even though it may be something that was important. So all of our projects are important, but some are realistic and some can come to fruition. And if just doing that will free up a lot of dollars. And we have been, I think Cecilia Estelano, Glenn Wasserman, certainly the City Council has to support that. I think that's very important. What can we do and what can't we do? We did increase our grant-making unit, and it's had tremendous success. And there are dollars that are available from other sources that we're able to get because we have the bodies to be able to write the grants and pursue the proposals. I don't think we cut that. I think that we have got to work with the other city departments in terms of where are there duplicative services where we can have a collective cooperation agreement to deliver the services as opposed to us working in tandem with someone. And in terms of getting the dollars out, I mean, this is going to be a little bit politically incorrect. I think that we have to have an analysis of each project and what will help the maximum number of people. And so, for example, I know that you guys are considering home ownership opportunity programs, foreclosure relief programs. No one wants anyone to be foreclosed. Everybody wants people to have home ownership opportunities. But I do think that in today's difficult times, we have to say, look, if we have $1 that can help 5 people or $1 that can help 1 person, I think we have to err on the side of the 5 and not on the 1. And I think that, for example, affordable housing. We have some affordable housing projects where we're spending $500,000 a unit. And one of the reasons for that is it's got all the bells and whistles and all the different design elements that people want. And that's great. I think that people should live in beautiful, wonderful, affordable housing. But we have to figure out a way to create affordable housing for $200,000 a unit because we can help more people if we do that. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do, and certainly our board is working with the staff and looking at, is this project going to happen within the next 5 years? Is the developer viable? Because if it's not, we need to take those dollars and allocate them to things that can really happen. Are these expenditures the best way that we can expend this dollar? Or, can another city department do it? Is there a way that we can allocate those dollars? We're doing that, and we have to continue to do it. And then we have to take each expenditure and are we maximizing our effort, maximizing our leverage, and be honest with ourselves. And that right now we can't do this because we have other more pressing priorities that will benefit a greater number of people. So to me, if we do those things from a strategic level and we set the tone at the board, I think that the staff will have the direction to execute. And I think there will be the cost savings and there'll be opportunities for other city departments to come to us and figure out ways that if there's a hole in other parts of the budget, how we can as a city deliver services that are needed without there being, just what you guys do is very, very important. It's hard for me to believe that there are that many things that you can cut out where it won't have a tremendous service impact. So I keep thinking, how can we deliver the same services more efficiently, collectively, without creating pain for people? And so, we have our small part. Hopefully I'm answering your question, but I think that's what we're trying to do.
Mostly, and I appreciate that answer. I'll just you need to expand on it further, but it was a little bit more pointed in that. Appreciate how you're going to get dollars out in the street in general terms, but the city and CRA are in very different places actually, because our money can't be rated because of Prop 1A that passed by the state. The state can't take our money, but they can take yours. And if we're looking at those medium-term good strategies, that money may not be there. So it's more, what is the emergency strategy right now that if in a month they're saying, okay, we're looking what the balance is, and is there any place we can get? We certainly know there's shortfalls on where we build affordable housing right now. And I know that politically incorrect also crossing those agency, CDD can move that money. There are parts of the CRA that can move that money. Housing can move that money. So it's either use it or lose it. And that's the environment that's coming up right now in the state.
We definitely, I think that certainly our staff can talk more about the, immediate specific plans that we have. But we recognize the fact that certainly the state wants to and has taken some of our dollars, but we have really in this reprogramming committed our money to things that can happen now, or that things that have a chance of being brought to fruition. So I think that if you look at our most recent projects and budgets, we are allocating them to things that are real and that can happen, so that they are, in effect, encumbered or committed in such a way that they're not likely to be taken from us. So, that's what we're trying to do at the board level. I think that we'll be successful, and we're also teaming up with the California Redevelopment Association and some of the other agencies that are collectively represent redevelopment associations to make sure that the state understands that hurting us is really hurting themselves. I mean, this is investment that we're talking about, and I think that I'm optimistic that we'll figure out a way to work with the state to not, cut off our nose to spite our face.
Let's hope so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garcetti. And just to, I guess touch on Mr. Garcetti's point, or, a piece of what he was trying to say. I wish you all the luck in dealing with the state. But it's my understanding, I heard a projection yesterday that the shortfall is about $3 billion more than when I was speaker, which was, and it was horrendous then. So they are going to take your money. It's no question. Yep. So whatever you can do to get it encumbered, I mean, you should really do that at demon speed. Anyway, without objection, well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Without objection, we will recommend your appointment to the full council. It's my understanding today, sometime after 10. Good to see you again. Okay, Ms. Barclay.
Yes, sir.
We're now switching to our joint committee, where we have one item. It's my understanding, if you could read item 1 on the joint committee agenda.
Item 1 is reports from the CDD and the CAO in response to a motion, Alarcon Parks, requesting authority to negotiate and execute a $15 million loan agreement with the Valley Economic Development Center to fund a small business loan program on a citywide basis.
Okay, Mr. Smith, did you want to say anything at this point? Do you want to move this, or?
Just let's hear the report, and I think we have a recommendation to make by one. A couple questions.
Welcome.
Barbara Taylor from the CEO's office. We reviewed CDD's request to provide $15 million to the Valley Economic Development Center to start the citywide small business loan program. And a report provided 2 options to the council to consider. We've had subsequent meetings with the CLA and CDD, and I understand that CLA has some modifications to our request.
Okay. Identify yourself so your bosses know that you did, in fact, come to work today.
Thank you. My name is Ninus Benjamin. I'm from CDD.
Good man, by the way. I want you to know that.
Thank you. Our recommendation is for $15 million capacity loan we applied under Section 108 loan, and we provided as a loan to VEDC in order to implement a small business loan program on a citywide basis. And VEDC has agreed to work with other LABAP agencies of the CDD to work cooperatively with them. One of the recommendations that we appreciate CAO has recommended that possibility that we at CDD ourselves implement this program. At this moment, we do not have the staff and resources to do it. By the time we hire the right people in order to originate, underwrite, document, administer, and then collect all these loans, which will be many, will be too late. Right now, our objective is to fulfill something that private sector is failing. Right now, there's a credit crunch, and small businesses, their line of credit is being cut. They are unable to replace their inventories, and they have a lot of account receivable. There's no factoring available. They cannot sell them. We are trying to step in with level of over collateralization even, still fulfill where banks are failing. And the VEDC we have done our due diligence. They have come with the request in writing for this loan. And we have done our due diligence. We believe they have the capacity, track record to implement this on a citywide basis, and they have agreed to work with other community-based lenders. With that, we are recommending your approval.
Okay.
Thank you. My name's
Go.
Yes. Two chairmen, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Chairman, members of the
Smith
council.
and Wesson.
Smith and Wesson. There you go. I'm Warren Cooley, and Vice President with Valley Economic Development Center, and I'm here today on Roberto Barragon's behalf, who is in Washington doing something about what this transitioning thing that's going on in our country. Our organization, most of you know some level about us, but we're a 32-year-old organization that started in the San Fernando Valley. And I don't want to belabor certain points, but just a couple things I want to point out to you. We're all we do. We're a nonprofit entity, and all we do is business-oriented services. So that's our bread and butter service to the community. In our 32 years, we've been involved in some very significant lending programs of this type. For the city, one of the things that we've recently done is the old Community Development Bank portfolio. We took that portfolio and worked on collections, increased the collections by 200% in a 2-year period that we had it under contract to the city, got it to a place where it was a good saleable portfolio to another entity that the city could recover a considerable amount of money. And I think as you look at us, we have the infrastructure in place. We loan on an ongoing basis, so we have the infrastructure in place. We got the staff. We've got the programs in place to take this program on tomorrow and begin to administer it tomorrow. We've got a pipeline of businesses, probably $3 million in the pipeline that are good potential loans that they can't find money elsewhere. We're committed to working with other agencies throughout the city, paying a fee for loans that they bring to the program, so it would be a citywide effort. And I think one of there's a number of different organizations perhaps that would say they do loans. One of the things about doing loans is I think if there's any part of that process that you have to be willing to do to be a good community development lender is you have to be a good collector. And you've got to have a collection process in place, not an onerous process, but you've got to have a collection process in place to do the best that you can do to recap and recover the funds that have been lent, and at the same time be willing to take risks that banks won't take, which is like zero risk at this point in time. So those are some of the attributes that we bring to the table. We're honored to be considered to do the program, and commit to you that if you approve it, we'll get $5 million of work in the small business community within the first 3 months.
Okay,
Thank you.
Now, before Ms. Perry, Mr. Smith, did you want to?
Yeah, a couple of questions, one of which Ms. Perry was going to ask, so I'll let her ask that, but just for the record, after the 1994 earthquake, VEDC was our critical partner in getting cash on the street to business and getting them open and running again. So I know you have experience in getting cash on the street very quickly. My concerns are a couple with this. First of all, the interest rates. With the Fed interest rate at virtually zero now, how will you be competitive with the marketplace once TARP funds begin really flowing into the banking industry, which is the spigot's just now opening. So how would
Well, I think, I mean, interest rates are basically based on risk. I think the commitment I can make to you, we haven't set what the rate would be, but the rate would be a competitive rate, and we'd try to get the rate under a competitive rate from a bank standpoint.
And the word risk is one that I asked my staff to follow this issue very closely the last week or so. I'm very concerned about risk and risk aversion at this time in the economy. I don't think we can afford too much of a risk factor because we have to back it up.
Right.
So how are you going to reduce risk or give us loans that are going to be solid loans after the what some people call the civil unrest, what Mr. Parks and others call the riot of 1992, whatever you want to call it? We took significant risk to make loans to get business back on its feet, and we lost significant amount of money because of that, and we're criticized for that. I think the council at that time made a conscientious decision. We didn't care about risk. We wanted to get money flowing into central LA and bring it back to life, and didn't care. But the newspapers raked us over the coal for giving bad loans. So how in this time are we going to protect ourselves, because we can't backstop those loans if they fail?
No, I presume that we do care about risk at this point in time. Just our risk history, just to give you kind of a quickie little, we have a federal loan program, revolving loan fund that we do, $6 million from EDA, and our current loss is about 2% on that portfolio. We have a more risky microloan program where we do a number of different smaller loans, and the recent loans we've done, our losses on that portfolio are they're running about 8% at this point in time, and I mean, underwriting is critical to this particular program, and there's a lot of people. And one of the reasons that we'll concentrate primarily at this stage on existing businesses, I don't think the riskier, you get riskier when you get into startup businesses, and I'm not saying that we won't do any startup businesses, but basically the concentration would be on existing businesses. So existing businesses have a track record. Existing businesses have some level of collateral, and they have some demonstrated cash flow, and so we'll use the same criteria that we've used on all of our other loans to keep the loss rate down to the lowest possible level. And within our industry, we have, we're probably in the top 3 or 4% across the country in loss rates.
I would think 8% is a little risky at this time for us. So I hope we can do better than that. But CDD, and also while you're talking, if you address, what are you going to do in the way of oversight to oversee the loans to see that we're on that path?
There are three layers of over collateralization is one of them. In structuring this loan, we have contacted SBA, and we understand most of their programs are real estate based right now with depleted real estate assets. Many people cannot borrow. So we have structured this based on account receivable. Does not have to be real estate secured. So based on account receivable and inventories, and we have put ratio of 35% loan to value with respect to those asset categories. And I would like to emphasize that this financing is not to refinance troubled loans that many businesses are having. This cannot be used for that. This has to be used for eligible expenditures as per CFR, Code of Federal Regulations. And we do have in the program a 5% loan loss reserve fund. We are funding it from the program in order to fund the losses. Another question that you raised initially, this program is not to compete with banks. If tomorrow with the Federal Reserve Bank and federal government comes, injects more money, 0% interest rate and other means for banking sector starts lending, this program, we cannot use this program in competition with banks. If banks step in, this program will stop. We are trying to fulfill where banks are failing at this moment, and they have been failing for the last year or so. So we have layers by collateral, by loan loss reserve fund, and Code of Federal Regulation to minimize the risks. But this economic contraction is very severe, and the possibility of losses are there. We will try to address them as best we can on a case-by-case basis, and CDD will be on the credit committee with VEDC. We will sit on that credit committee, and we will be monitoring every transactions that they underwrite. We will be monitoring, and if we face at point of time that losses are, this contraction is just devastating, we might have to stop lending.
Okay. Very good. I know my colleagues have some other questions. And before we finish, I'll make a recommendation that we have to do some language cleanup, but we'll do that at the end. So.
Okay, Ms. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I know VEDC very well, and they've done a great job in bringing lots of new businesses to the 9th Council District, and so I don't have a problem with that. I also have been with the city for a while and remember the Community Development Bank, the rise and the fall, and the inability to actually get money in the areas where it was most needed. I'm concerned about a couple of things. This is what I perceive to be a very high-risk program for the city. And I noted the gentleman's comment that they don't have the staff at CDD to be able to administer such a program. I'm not sure how that conclusion was reached or derived, other than, everybody's got it tight right now. And the thing that concerns me is this is federal money with strict requirements, very strict requirements. Any one of those requirements upon which there may be a default, we, the city, will be on the hook to reimburse the federal government, not VEDC. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so if something goes wrong, we will have to pay the federal government back, not VEDC.
That's correct. VEDC has only a fiduciary responsibility for in underwriting, in collection, in administration of their function. This is a limited obligation of VEDC. Our borrowing from HUD is a distinct obligation of the city CDBG obligation. It's not a general fund obligation, it's a CDBG obligation, but it's distinct from the sources of repayment from the loans. That's correct.
In the best of all worlds, who in CDD would have performed this same function if you had those people available to you?
It would have been my division, Economic Development Division, would be my division to do the loans. There will be many loans.
But what's happened to your division? Why don't you give me just a quick summary?
My division is right now overworked, understaffed for major projects even. We have long list of projects to underwrite, requests to consider, and doing small business loan for us is totally not practical.
Okay, so then who made the determination that you would basically, for lack of a better word, that you're outsourcing that function now?
We are not outsourcing. We did not solicit VEDC. When I joined City in February of 2008, and after a few weeks, Mr. Barragan visited, he introduced himself, and he requested this program. I spent a lot of time doing my due diligence. It was pursuant to a request. We did not solicit VEDC to do this financing. They came and requested that, and they made that in writing. I have their letters.
But he didn't come in and visit based on the knowledge that your department was understaffed. I guess what I'm trying to find out, who made the decision where there was a breaking point that, somebody inside CDD said, oh my gosh, we can't do this. Well, this is great. We need to perform this function, but we just don't have the people to do it. And then, as luck would have it, you got a visit from someone who could do it. And I'm not really clear where that breaking point took place. I mean, in terms of a deliberative process, who internally to CDD decided, well, we can't perform this anymore. It's a function that needs to be performed. We can't fill the positions that we had before.
Councilwoman, we were hearing in the market, newspapers, public information, there was credit crunch and small businesses were in trouble. We attended several events at Federal Reserve Bank in Los Angeles here. It was totally focused on how small businesses are being hurt as a result of their line of credit being cut. And in the midst of all these, we got this visit. We spent a lot of time to evaluate this. There will be, the size of these loans ranges from $75,000 to $450,000. The number of loans would be many. We do not know how many loans there will be.
I'm not so worried about that. I'm worried about the city's liability should any of these loans be out of compliance, and then we have a third party who has no cannot be held liable, we will be held liable. So I want to know what the department's strategy is in terms of mitigating or managing the potential for liability, and what the logic is in delegating this responsibility to a third party when, in fact, ultimately we do have the responsibility, because if something goes wrong, we're going to pay for it.
Absolutely. As far as meeting Code of Federal Regulation, we will require VEDC to comply with those. However, we will not wait for problem to happen. Before each transaction is committed, we will verify compliance with CFR. We have created layers within the program, the term sheet of the transaction, in the transmittal, layers of protection for the city as best as possible. Whether this will meet is a solid proof, no, maybe there will be a problem, but every perceivable risk we have identified, and we have put a mitigating factor for it. Now we have to implement that. We do have the staff, one person will be dedicated to the small business loan for merely monitoring every loan that VEDC is underwriting. And I will be involved with that personally too. So,
well, I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm not comfortable with this idea. I think we have a gaping hole here in terms of the liability issue. I'm willing to cast a no vote on this today if it's going to move forward. I would like to have further discussion on the liability issue and to get some advice from lawyers, the city attorney, on how we protect ourselves or inure ourselves from that. I understand, the department's perspective. We're all overloaded, and it's a horrible time that everybody is going through. And I certainly would not dismiss what you've said here today. But again, having seen, what transpired with the Community Development Bank, and certainly not wanting to walk into a situation with that knowledge now, I want to know how we mitigate our liability in a way that's very, very tangible. I appreciate your words about we'll do the oversight, and you've got one person to do that, but it's got to be something more than words, memorandum of understanding, something contractual that we have in writing that we can all rely upon, and so that's my perspective for today.
Okay, I think Mr. Reyes and we will be losing a quorum.
Okay, I'll make it quick. I just want to ask VEDC, thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of reporting to the city with the status on the loan program activity, how often would you be reporting to the city?
We can do it monthly, quarterly. We can do it as frequently as monthly. Quarterly would probably be a easier way to do it, because you'd have more data to report on a quarterly basis.
Within those quarterly reports, there would be a vehicle by which the staff can review the nature of decision-making to minimize the level of bad loans, if you will. See, my point of view is this, is that if we're not providing these loans, then who will? And if we're not going to be targeting the neighborhoods that need it, then no one else will. And the fact is, these are the places where we need to generate the kinds of jobs that the mom and pops need, the small stores, the small entrepreneurs, and those areas that essentially, I'll be blunt, banks have redlined.
Right.
So when you look at the level of service needed in these areas, to me, this is a natural. I mean, there's a reason why they're called block grants. I mean, there's a reason why the federal government's involved. There's a reason why we are creating this kind of mechanism that creates that flow of dollars into areas that are neglected. And that's the risk we have to take. And Councilman Perry is right. We do have very difficult times. But if we have an entity with a track record of being accountable,
right,
who's shown a proven record that they can perform, and that they have the internal infrastructure to create checks and balances, and you have the oversight, maybe as Spartan-like as it is with the CDD department, but there is a vehicle to make it happen. I like to encourage an aye vote, because we need to do this now. We can't wait. We'll have quarterly reports, and I'm assuming it'll be quarterly. But I do want to ask the VDC one more question. How will this be citywide? How are we going to guarantee that this is being publicized and marketed as a citywide loan program?
Well, we'll work through.
Okay.
We'll work through our. Go ahead.
Why don't you answer that on the side? Because we're going to need Councilman Garcetti's vote. And
Okay,
almost
Mr.
quorum.
Smith, as you can see, so you need to make your recommendation so that we can move forward.
Okay, just move that we say CAO recommendation number 2, and Megan's going to read into the record that, while she's looking for that.
Well, what you can do, just submit it to the city clerk, and Greg, Mr. Smith, you can just finish.
We can,
Okay.
you were fine with that language? Fine. And, all right, and then we'll execute the 108 loan agreement with VEDC, subject to the determination of the work that could not be economically or feasibly performed by CDD staff, according to City Charter Section 1022, and instruct CDD to negotiate agreement.
And also, if we can add to that, Mr. Smith, I don't know if we'll be able to satisfy Ms. Perry, but why don't we take a shot and recommend that you return January to another joint committee, and maybe we can work that out at that
That's a
time.
good idea.
Okay?
Good idea.
All right, then at this point in time, Ms. Perry, we will have you registered as a no.
Mr. Chair, can we reinforce quarterly reports?
I can support his coming back, so I can
Okay.
support the CAO's recommendations today.
Okay, Mr. Reyes?
If we can emphasize the quarterly report, make that a
Committed.
requirement.
Committed.
Okay.
Could we also recommend that the CDD be instructed to return quarterly with the status of the loan and VEDC's implementation of the program?
Okay, then, without objection, we'll approve recommendation number 2 of the CAO report. Any more business before this committee, Ms. Barclay?
No, sir.
Then this committee is adjourned, so let it be written, so let it be done. Everybody have a happy holiday.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.